Good morning. I'm going to give you some stories of some unsolved cold cases. And then I'm going to fire up the necrophonic and see if any of the voices from the necrophonic would like to answer questions about these cold cases. It's a long shot, but see if we can figure some information out about cold cases. It's kind of a weird way to go, a weird kind of mix-up, basically. But it's worth seeing, just for the curiosity's sake of it. The Lady of the Dunes is the unidentified Cape Cod murder victim and extra in Jaws. She was found on July 26, 1974, lying face down on a beach towel in the dunes near Provincetown, Massachusetts. Her hands were missing, and small piles of pine needles were left in their place. Her head had been crushed and nearly severed from her body, possibly with some sort of military entrenching tool. Police suggest she could have been killed weeks earlier. With no clear way to identify her, the victim soon became known as the Lady of the Dunes. Who she is, why she was slain so brutally, and who ended her life are all mysteries that remain unsolved until this day. When she was discovered, police conducted extensive searches of the surrounding dunes, combed through missing person files, and compared tire tracks found near the scene to those of countless vehicles, yet they found nothing to explain the murder of the Lady of the Dunes. What do we know about her? Sadly, precious little. She was anywhere between 20 and 49 years of age, a more precise identification made impossible by the condition of the body. Though she had dental work, including extensive crowns done in what police called the New York-style consultations with dentists, have failed to yield any clues. Some of her teeth were removed, along with both of her hands and one forearm. Her nearly severed head was cushioned on a pair of carefully folded Wrangler jeans and a blue bandana. She was laid to rest later in 1974, but has been exhumed several times in the years since. Facial reconstruction was performed in 1979. Her body was exhumed in 1980 and again in 2000 for DNA testing. In 2010, her skull, which hadn't been reinterred with the rest of her body, was put through a CT scanner in order to produce more accurate facial reconstructions. In 2004, serial killer Haddon Clark confessed to the murder of the Lady of the Dunes, saying that he had evidence that the police needed buried in his grandfather's garden. Clark, however, suffers from paranoid schizophrenia, and authorities doubted the veracity of his claims, and to this and several other murders. Over the years, police, as well as amateur sleuths, had pursued and put forth a wide variety of possible leads in the case. At one time, it was thought that the Lady of the Dunes may have been another victim of the serial killer, Tony Costa. But Costa was convicted of his crimes in 1970 and hanged himself in a cell in May of 1974. Before the lady was killed, others attributed her death to notorious mobster Whitey Bulger, who was known to have removed some of his victims' teeth, but no connection between the lady and Bulger has ever been established. Other leads have also been followed, including a number of missing persons roughly matching the age and description of the Lady of the Dunes. All of these leads have ultimately been ruled out, while investigators, both professional and amateur, have maintained a continued interest in the slaying. The case of the Lady of the Dunes has been cold since the 1970s. In August of 2015, Joe Hill, son of the famous horror novelist Stephen King, and no slouch of a horror writer himself, came forward with a new theory. He had been reading about the case in Deborah Halber's book, Skeleton Crew, How Amateur Sleuths Are Solving America's Coldest Cases. Then he watched Jaws, At exactly 54 minutes and 2 seconds into the film, Hill noticed something strange. Among the crowd, on the far left side of the screen, stood a female extra dressed in jeans, a white t-shirt, and a blue bandana. She bore a striking similarity to the reconstructed images of the Lady of the Dunes. What if the young murder victim no one has ever been able to identify has been seen by hundreds of millions of people in a beloved summer classic, and they didn't even know they were looking at her? Hill asks in his August 2015 blog post, what if the ghost of the Lady of the Dunes haunts Jaws? What if Jaws was filming near Martha's Vineyard, not far from Provincetown, in June of 1974, before the Lady of the Dunes met her untimely end? The film was a big deal in the area and attracted plenty of attention. Many locals showed up for the film's large crowd scenes. It is entirely possible that the Lady of the Dunes was one of them. Extras were not tracked as carefully back then as they are today, and there is perhaps no way to know for sure who all those people were. Like so many things about the case, it provides another tantalizing mystery rather than a tidy solution. Interesting. Moving on to the next one. But first, I will fire up the necrophonic and see if there's any coincidences, because I'll leave it at that. Alright, let's begin. Necrophonic. Do you entities know anything of the Lady of the Dunes? If you know anything of her, please give me her name so somebody can have some closure. There's got to be somebody out there who is somebody that fits the description. Can you give me a name? Was she actually an extra in Jaws? Who was her killer? Gwen. Are you saying her name is Gwen? If her name is Gwen, what is her last name? Okay, if her name is Gwen, I don't know if you gave me the last name. If you did, you're welcome to repeat it again. What is the motive? Why did she get murdered? Have you given me the name of the murderer? What is the name of the murderer? Okay, I'll come back and ask more questions in a bit. You can say anything you guys want when I'm got the necrophonic fired up, but I'd prefer some straightforward answers if you have this knowledge. Thank you. Alright, I don't know what I heard, but I will put the captions in of what I think I heard. If you hear anything different, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. Alright, second story, and it's one most everybody knows. The Villisca axe murders. Even today, police know very little about these 8 gruesome deaths, despite the movie, and immense amount of gossip that their murders inspired. During the evening of June 9th, 1912, in Villisca, Iowa, 6 members of the Moore family and 2 house guests were found murdered in the Moore home. All 8 victims, including the 6 children, had suffered from severe head wounds from an axe. The axe had belonged to the family and was left in the guest bedroom after the deed was done. The investigation for this case got further than most on this list. Several suspects were processed and many went to trial. One even went twice. The first trial ended in a split jury, while the second netted the suspect of acquittal. The Moores were well known and well liked in their community. The motive and the case remain a mystery. Let's dig deeper.
Thank you, Dad.
Shh. Miss Mary Peckman had a terrible feeling about her next-door neighbors. It was a sunny summer morning in 1912, and yet the Moore family household was eerily still. Every curtain was drawn and all of the doors were locked. Strange for a friendly town like Villisca, Iowa. After numerous knocks went unanswered, Miss Peckman finally called a Moore relative for help. Ross Moore arrived soon after with a spare key in hand. Together they opened the door to one of the grisliest murder scenes in American history. Every member of the Moore family, Josiah and his wife, Sarah, their 4 children, Herman, Mary, Arthur, and Paul, had been bludgeoned to death with an axe. 2 of Mary's friends, Ina and Lena Stillinger, who happened to have slept over that night, were also found dead. All 8 victims were discovered in their beds. Only Lena showed signs of being awake during the attack. Somehow the killer had slipped in at night and crept through the halls, systematically slaughtering the Moore family and their guests with axe swings so violent he left gouge marks in the ceiling. Wow. It's power there. Maybe even rage. The grisly Villisca axe murders of June 10th, 1912 shocked the surrounding community, both for its random brutality and the string of bizarre clues left behind at the scene of the crime. A heavy slab of bacon was discovered in the downstairs guest room, beside a broken keychain and the Glory murder weapon. A bowl of bloody water sat beside a plate of uneaten food on the table in the kitchen. Creepier still, after his killing was done, the murderer draped cloths over the crushed faces of his victims. Then he maneuvered through the home and ceremoniously covered each mirror and exposed window pane with linens pulled from dresser drawers. Who could have committed such a heinous act? Theories abounded. Yet there were never enough evidence to convince anyone of the crime. Some accused Frank F. Jones, an Iowa state senator and business rival of Josiah Moore's, of hiring a contract killer to execute the Moore family. Others pointed to a violent man named Henry Lee Moore, no relation, who had bludgeoned his mother and grandmother with an axe in the months after Villisca and was suspected of additional slayings. Others still pointed to Reverend George Kelly, a traveling minister who actually confessed to the crime in 1917. Kelly was in Villisca at the time of the killings and even posed as an inspector from Scotland Yard to get a closer glimpse of the murder scene. He was also a rumored sexual deviant who struggled with mental health issues his whole life. Soon after singing his confession Signing his confession, the Reverend recanted. He was tried twice for the killings and eventually cleared of all charges. To this day, Villisca Axe murder case remains open, enticing amateur sleuths around the globe. The grisly tale also attracts tourists with a taste for macabre. The Moore homestead in Villisca is now a museum. For around $500 a night, you can even rent the house for a spooky sleepover. Now it's time for our firing up of the necrophonic. I almost said recnophonic. What the hell would that be? We will get on to that now. We'll start now. I tried this and I forgot to record or hit record, so let's try again. Any of you entities know anything about the Villisca Axe murders that happened in 1912 in Villisca, Iowa? Is it of demonic influence? Who the murderer is? Yeah? Can you give me his name? Or her name? Oh, gonna go silent now, huh? How about, can you give me the motive for these murders? House? One more chance. What is the name of the murder of the Villisca murders in 1912? Well, I don't know that I heard anything there, but like I said, I'll put the captions in of what I think I heard. And if you hear something and you want to let me know, there's always the comment section below. Now back to the last story, I think, for now. I will return in just a second. The Phantom Killer and the Texarkana Murders. This is also known as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. These 8 attacks took place over the course of 10 weeks. The attackers soon earned the name for the Phantom Killer. 5 of the 8 attacked by the Phantom Killer were murdered. The others were seriously injured. These murders sent the town of Texarkana into a panic during the spring of 1946. Locals heavily armed themselves. Businesses sold out of guns, locks, ammunition, and other protective devices in a matter of days. Most people hid in their homes or hotels. Some even left town. The Texas Rangers were called in to investigate. Some even took matters into their own hands and tried to bait the Phantom, unsuccessfully. Police patrolled the streets and neighborhoods 24/7, but after 3 months passed and no attacks were reported, The Texas Rangers quietly left town. The identity of the Phantom Killer still haunts Texarkana. Nice. Let's go a little deeper into this. And there will be one more. As soon as this opens. In 1946, a sadistic killer dressed in a white mask terrorized the small town of Texarkana at night. Texarkana is a small town that straddles the state line between Texas and Arkansas. It is also known as the town that dreaded sundown, thanks to the 1976 horror flick of the same name, set in Texarkana and based loosely on the string of local slayings. The photo slasher film came out just 2 years after the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas, and 2 years before Halloween. Yet, the true story behind the Texarkana Moonlight Murders is as chilling as anything seen on the silver screen, and made all the more unsettling because the case remains unsolved nearly 70 years later. Oops. The mysterious Moonlight Murders rocked the sleepy southern town of Texarkana in 1946. Police on either side of the state line struggled to work as one, while the killings themselves possessed the iconic quality of urban legend. Young couples parked at the end of a lonely road, savage after the sun went down. In fact, some claim that the infamous campfire tale of lovers who catch a report of a hook-handed killer on the car radio only discover a bloodied hook hanging from the back door can be traced to the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. The killer, described by a witness as wearing a white mask or sack with holes cut for eyes, was dubbed the Phantom Killer or Phantom Slayer, a name that, like so much about the case, seemed ready-made for drive-in theaters. Authorities believe that he killed 5 people in 10 weeks. 3 others, including his first 2 victims, survived their attacks. The first attack took place on February 22, 1946, on a secluded road outside of town. The Phantom approached Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Laurie, a young couple, parked in their car. He blinded them with his flashlight upon approach, then held them at gunpoint and ordered them out of the vehicle. The Phantom then told Jimmy Hollis to remove his pants and proceeded to beat him severely, fracturing his skull. The Phantom told Mary Jean Larry to run. When she scrambled toward a ditch, he told her to change course and run toward the road. He then chased her down and sexually assaulted her with his pistol. He carried before letting her run away again. In spite of the savagery of their attacks, both Hollis and Laurie survived. Others were not so lucky. In March, Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were found dead in their parked car at the end of a secluded road. The couple, who had only been dating 6 weeks, had had dinner with Griffin's sister and her boyfriend earlier in the night. Griffin, 29, was a veteran who made his living in carpentry and painting. He was shot fatally in the back of his head. Moore, only 17, was living in a nearby boarding house with her cousin. She was also fatally shot in the back of the head. A few weeks later, they were joined by another young boy and girl, Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker. Booker was the Phantom's youngest victim, at only 15 years of age. Martin and Booker had begun dating after a long friendship dating back to kindergarten. Booker played the saxophone in a local band, and Martin came out to pick her up. 5 hours later, Martin's body was discovered. Booker's body would not be found for another 6 days, laying 2 miles from Martin. In the first week of May, the Phantom Killer attacked what are his last official victims, a husband and wife, in their farmhouse north of town. Virgil Starks was killed by the 2 shots to the back of the head, but his wife, Katie, survived in spite of being shot twice in the face and having to run down the street to a neighbor's house to get help. While the Phantom was on the loose, Texarkana was like a city under siege. Residents armed themselves and curfews were set for local businesses. In spite of the involvement of the Texas Rangers, no conclusive arrest was ever made in connection with the Moonlight Murders. Theories spread widely about the Phantom Killer's identity. The killer's targeting of couples and lack of Identifiable motives such as burglary or revenge led many in the area to believe that the killer was some sort of sex maniac. Nearly 400 people were arrested. Wow. In connection with the killings. Some of the suspects were like a University of Arkansas freshman who committed suicide in '48, an escaped German prisoner of war, and an LA resident who believed that he may have committed the crimes in a coma. So many locals believed U.L. Swinney, arrested in '47 for auto theft, was the Phantom. His wife confessed to as much at the same time, but by law, she could not testify against her husband. She later redacted her confession. Swinney remained in prison as a habitual offender until 1973 and died in 1994 without ever implicating himself in the murders. Now, back to the necrophonic. But first, I need to do the Axemen of New Orleans. This is going to be the next video. It's not what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go back to the necrophonic. But the Axemen of New Orleans is interesting and might get some attention from these voices. I'll be right back. Back with the necrophonic to see about the last section. Okay, entities. I just got done reading a story about the Phantom Killer in Texarkana. Do you have any knowledge or information that you'd like to share about that? Baseball? What the fuck does baseball have to do with it? Who committed these heinous murders? Bill? Can you give me the full name? Satan? You think Satan came up out of hell, walked the earth, and killed people for what? What's the motive? What I'd like to understand, and this isn't necessarily from the necrophonic places, but did you notice that the Moors were slayed in their house with an axe in 1912, and then one of the victims in this Texarkana murder thing was also a Moor. Killed the same way. Interesting coincidence, if you ask me. Why do you demons have something out for the Moore family? I can't guarantee they were even related, but... Death? Yeah, we're talking about death. What is the motive for the Texarkana murders? Look it up. Who is the killer? First and last name. Suddenly I like to say. Alright, moving on to the next story because I'm not going to sit here all day. You got anything to say about these murders? Okay, shutting you off. If you heard anything, once again, let me know in the comments, if you will, and I'll put in the captions of what I think I hear. This will be our final story for this video. The Axemen of New Orleans. This one's pretty interesting. If you haven't heard it, I think I've heard bits and pieces about it. Anyway, in 1919, an axe-wielding killer stalked New Orleans, murdering 6 and attacking 12 more. Many of those murdered were Italian or Italian-American, causing many to believe that the attacks were racially motivated. In one of his most notorious acts on March 13, 1919, a letter said to have been written by the axeman was published in newspapers citywide. The letter contained he would kill at 15 minutes past midnight on March 19th, but would not disturb the occupants of any place where jazz was playing. Let's move on to the actual whole story, if it'll open it. An axe-wielding maniac stalked the streets of the Big Easy, and the only way to avoid slaughter was to play jazz. It was the night of March 19, 1919, and jazz played in New Orleans. Music poured out of private residences where wealthy white New Orleans residents hired bands to play music popularized in a mixed race red light district. Nightclubs and bars were packed to the point of overflow. In a city known for its lively atmosphere, this may have been one of the most gig-heavy nights in history. Yet the musicians weren't playing for love or money. These concerts were born of fear, ordered by an axe-wielding maniac who claimed to come straight from hell. For almost a year, the city of New Orleans had been the subject of multiple attacks by a serial killer, an axe murderer, who to this day has never been identified. The mysterious figure is known to history as the Axeman of the New Orleans. And while it's impossible to verify whether he's responsible for all the murders ascribed to him, it is a fact that from May of 1918 until October of 1919, 12 people were attacked across greater New Orleans, 7 whom died from their brutal wounds. In almost every case, a small hole was carved out of a door. The axeman would crawl through this opening so small that subjects who were suspects were dismissed on account of their size, and then bludgeoned his victims with an axe. Curiously, the weapon employed was often in the house and left at the scene of the crime along with the chisel used for breaking through the door. The victims of the axeman had qualities in common. They were mainly women and men, and only suffered blows if they got in the axeman's way, and never seemed to be the primary target. Many of the victims were Italian Americans who at the time represented the Big Easy's white underclass. Citizens of Italian descent were no stranger to violence in New Orleans. In a city troubled by its tense race relations, the largest mass lynching in civic history was one of 11 Italian Americans outside Parish Prison in 1891. Italians and their descendants lived in crowded slums that lacked the law enforcement presence of other neighborhoods. Many assumed Italian neighborhoods were run by mafia organizations, like the Black Hand, a stereotype grounded in some fact, but also inflated by prejudice and sensationalism. The recent end of the World War I added fuel to nativist fires. Into this volatile mix stepped the axeman. His first officially recognized murder was on May 22, 1918. On that late spring day, he used his chisel to remove part of the door and slip into the home of Joseph's brother, Jake, and Andrew. Wait, I just messed up there. And slip into the home of Joseph and Catherine Maggio. When Joseph's brothers, Jake and Andrew, who also lived in the home, went to check on the couple, they found Catherine's corpse draped over Joseph, whose head and face were gashed. Joseph reacted to the appearance of his brothers, but died from his wounds shortly thereafter. Catherine's head, meanwhile, had almost detached from her body. Her killer had used Andrew's straight razor to slit her throat so deeply that she had been practically decapitated. Wow. That's strong. Andrew Maggio was arrested for the attack but released after an investigation turned up no further evidence linking him to the crime. What police did find, about a block from the Maggio house, was a message scrawled in chalk. seemingly by a child, which read, "Mrs. Maggio will sit up tonight, just like Mrs. Tone." Over the long, hot summer that followed, 2 more attacks yielded 4 more victims, 2 of whom died from their wounds. One victim who survived, a Polish immigrant named Louis Bessemer, was, like the Maggios, a grocer. This led to speculation that the attacker was a gangster bent on extortion. But if he was affiliated with organized crime, he seemed strangely nonchalant about money. The Axeman's victims rarely had their values taken. A strange lull then settled over New Orleans as the summer dragged on. From August 10th, 1918 until late winter of 1919, no attacks were reported. Then on March 10th, 1919, in the suburb of Gretna, just across the river from the New Orleans proper, tragedy struck. The Cortamiglia family, Charles, Rosie, and 2-year-old daughter Mary, were attacked in their home. After an invader carved out part of the kitchen door, Rosie was found cradling her dead daughter in her arms. Was the only survivor. Oh, she was the only survivor. Bad grammar in this, so that's why I keep getting screwed up. I've read it 3 times. Fear tightened its grip on New Orleans once again. 3 days after the Cortamiglia attack, an ominous letter arrived at local newspapers. The author demanded its publication. The address line, in an eerie echo of Jack the Ripper's correspondence, was from hell. Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, this is the letter. They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. The writer went on to threaten additional murders, claiming he'd leave no clue except for his bloody axe smeared with the gore of his victims. Then he offered the terrified citizen of New Orleans a proposition. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. And in my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I'm very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not play jazz on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. It is impossible to know whether the Axeman truly wrote this letter. Nevertheless, the New Orleans citizens took the demand to heart. On March 19th, the city resounded with jazz. No attack came that evening. But it wasn't quite over yet. 3 more victims, including 1 fatality, followed in August, September, and October of 1919. After October, the Axeman murders ceased, though there's speculation that the killer may have struck earlier in the decade, around 1911 or 1912. These murders remain a mystery. The grisly details of the case echo through the years, like the swinging jazz that played on that terrifying night in New Orleans. Creepy. So let's take it to the necrophonic, because it says it's a demon that did it, so let's find out. Oh my god, I read that much. I'll be right back. Okay, so demons, if you're here, shit, sorry guys. Demons, if you're here, would you please speak to me about Axeman of New Orleans in the early 1900s? Who committed these crimes? Was it human or demon? Human or demon? There was a letter that states that a demon had done this. Any truth? Did a demon kill a bunch of people and harm a bunch of people in New Orleans with an axe? Yes. Was that a yes to me? That was a yes, so yes again. If that was right for me. Can you tell me the name of the demon, please? Probably not. Why not? I just want to see if I can solve anything. I just want to see if you guys are worth even talking to. Now a couple of times. If it's a demon that killed these people, then I'm pretty sure you're not on Earth, or at least you're not hovering around that area anymore. What is your name? Devil? Devil is a form of demon, a ranking of demon. I know that. So, what devil are we talking about? Give me a name. Don't make me pull out that special way that you guys don't like. What is the name? Who is the demon who was the axe murderer? I guess I gotta take it a little further. They don't like a certain phrase being said. God didn't kill them. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to fucking give me the name. I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to give me the name of the demon attributed to the axe murderers and the story I just read. In the name of Jesus Christ, you will give me the name now. Give me the name. In the name of Jesus Christ, give me the fucking name. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to speak loud and clear and give me the name of the demon. In the name of Jesus Christ, you will give me the name now. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to answer me honestly. Is Leviathan the one? Is Lucifer? Definitely close. Was it Satan himself? In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to give me the name or names of these killers through the stories I have read today. Honestly. Okay, that's enough from them. I'm going to go back through and edit this whole video and see what I've come up with out of this. See if anything lines up with any of the stories. If you guys are into this true crime and investigation into the darkness, I guess you'd call them, with the necrophonic, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me on this little weird trip. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you comment, like, subscribe, all that, and definitely if you comment, let me know about other cold cases that you are interested in having me run this way in a video. You guys are all awesome. Thanks again.